And welcome to Houston Newsmakers Extra. I'm talking with Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher. We've been talking about a number of things for this week's program, but among them, Supreme Court decided that gerrymandering, as much as it might be a problem, was something that they're not going to really get involved in, at least the way that a lot of Democrats think they should get involved. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, interestingly, the cases that were up before the Supreme Court were bipartisan in the sense that there were cases from Democrats who were concerned about the maps and Republicans who were concerned about the maps. But ultimately, what they were talking about is political gerrymandering. And they said there's no rule for the federal courts in deciding whether these maps are drawn correctly, that it's a political question. And that troubles me for a lot of reasons that are nonpartisan. But voters should pick their representatives, not the other way around. And what we see is the extreme district redistricting process that's being done by folks who have a dog in the fight.
Right, vested interest to make sure that they don't get unelected, so to speak.
Yeah, and so you get these districts that are not geographically contiguous. They split up communities in different ways. You're cracking and packing the districts and doing things that are deeply problematic. Now, the Supreme Court just took on this political gerrymandering question, but I think what it means is it's up to Congress to continue to fight for democracy reform. And the very first bill we passed in this Congress was H.R. 1, the For the People Act. And one of the things we took on is this redistricting process. And what we believe is the right thing to do is to have nonpartisan, independent commissions determine these district lines.
That's going to take a long time to get into place, is it not? And that's another reminder that elections really matter. When people say, my protest vote is to sit on the sidelines, it's like the worst thing they could ever do if they really have a sense of what they want Congress to do.
Absolutely. And elections have consequences, and we see that every single day. We see the result at every level of government. And so it's really important to engage and to vote in every election, not just the presidential years. But there are some states that have adopted these independent commissions, and it's only one of the things that we need to do. The other thing we have got to do is ensure access to the ballot box, make sure that everyone is able to exercise their right to vote. And so that's why I was proud to co-sponsor this legislation, as well as H.R. 4, which is the Restore the Vote Act, to make sure that we are not seeing the kinds of efforts to suppress voting that are part of our history, unfortunately, that we're working to correct. But we need to make sure that people have information, have access to the ballot box, that we're not closing driver's license offices in whole areas of a state so that people can't get their cards, can't vote. I mean, this is a democracy, and we need everyone to participate and be involved. And efforts to suppress the vote really undermine our entire system of government.
A couple more things I want to touch on. One closer to us, one farther away. During the program, we talked about the immigration issue. One of the things is that getting people in, you talked about the fact that we really need to have comprehensive change and whatnot. How do you balance letting people into the country, or the process of letting people in the country and taking care of them at the border, with the reality that everybody can't come in? I mean, everybody can't come in. That's just the reality. They may want to come in because we are the greatest country in the world, but everybody can't come in. How do you balance the humanity, the need to be humane, with the reality that you just can't let everybody in?
Right. Well, I think that there is no balance in terms of treating people humanely. That is an absolute requirement, that we need to treat everyone presenting themselves at our border with dignity and respect and a recognition of our common humanity. How you manage the immigration process and system, recognizing that in a system where we have a process and dealing with not only the people who want to come here, and I think there's a lot of room to change the way that we are doing that system, but also people who are already here, who are undocumented. These are some of the toughest questions we face, because we are a country of laws, and we believe in order, and we believe in making sure that people follow the process, and that is a challenge. But we also are members of a treaty on human rights, and we understand that people have the right to present themselves for asylum. And so there's a real distinction between asylum seekers who are presenting themselves at our border, who have the legal right to do so, and then to have their case for asylum adjudicated as quickly as possible. So what we need to do is treat everyone humanely, who is coming to our border. We need to facilitate the process that allows those cases to be heard. We need to make sure that we have immigration judges. We have a shortage of immigration judges. We just passed legislation to send more resources to the border and to make sure that those cases can be heard. But we are seeing a groundswell of outrage over what we've seen in the last couple of weeks of the treatment of people at our border. No toothbrushes, no soap, children, 8-year-olds taking care of 2-year-olds. This is not who we are, and it's certainly not who we want to be.
What do you say to the president who says, you know what, if you get it together, a couple of weeks I'm going to start sending everybody. We're going to start deporting. We're going to start having ICE raids to get people out of the country who should be out, that sort of thing. What are your response when you first heard that, and what kind of response should there be from Congress to that kind of conversation?
Well, I think, again, we need to make sure that we keep the public safe, right? Public safety is our number one priority and goal.
But I mean about the
government.
president threatening to send people.
But we also cannot have people living in fear. And I think that what I hear across the board, whether it comes to immigration or other issues, what we see from this administration is governing by chaos. And that is not helpful or conducive to any of us living in a civilized society. People are living in fear in this community, and that is not acceptable. That is not the way for us to deal with this problem. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have immigration and customs enforcement. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow the law, but it does mean that we cannot continue to demonize the people who are living here and have the conversation that we're having and have it be constructive for our communities. And I'm afraid that the president's approach and message on this is incredibly divisive and destructive on an issue where the majority of Americans agree that we need comprehensive immigration reform and that we need to address those who are here who are undocumented and that we need to find a path to citizenship for dreamers and that there are a lot of ways to do that. And in Houston, people are working on that. There's a broad coalition and consortium of people from across the spectrum politically who agree that we need immigrants. Not only are we a city of immigrants and a nation of immigrants, but that we have workforce issues. We want people here. We know that immigration is an important part of our path forward. And so we've got to get it right. And we're not talking about it in a way that is moving the ball forward. And that's a real problem.
One of the things that is coming up, Robert Mueller has agreed to testify, or come testify. What are you most looking forward to from that? Anything more than what he's already said? Or what you think he's going to add to the conversation that's going on Capitol Hill about the report?
Well, I am pleased that he's coming to testify. I, of course, don't sit on the Judiciary Committee, so I won't be there for his testimony. But I think it's important that he come and that members of Congress are able to ask some of the questions that the Mueller report left unanswered and to have the ability to hear some of, whether it's just what's in his report or whether it's a little bit more information about how he reached some of those conclusions. I think it's important for all of us to look seriously at the issues that it raised and to be able to talk about it in a way that isn't divisive. And you asked me earlier about bipartisanship, and I think that one of the things that would really help is for us to, even though we function in a partisan system, to find the places of agreement and common ground and to take seriously the issues that he outlined, the threats to our democracy. That should not be a partisan issue. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that foreign countries are not able to interfere in our elections and that all of our voices are heard and count.
Speaking of foreign countries, are you concerned at all about the increase in rhetoric as it relates to Iran? I
am concerned that we are escalating the rhetoric and eliminating the opportunities for diplomacy. And I think diplomacy is what's really needed here. Mm-hmm. This is an incredibly complex situation. The threat of nuclear proliferation is real. The instability in the Middle East is real. And this is a place where we should be proceeding with extreme caution and really making sure that we are careful and circumspect. And that's, once again, not what we're seeing from the administration, and it's deeply, deeply concerning. Well, you've had a lot going on in your first 6 months. It's looking forward to the next 6 months and looking forward to seeing what comes out of your
experiences in Washington, D.C. as you represent your constituents in the 7th. So thank you so much for coming in. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much
Appreciate
for having me. Love being here.
Houston Newsmakers Extra. Share it with as many people as you possibly can. We'd like that.